This seems like a larger crowd than I expected. How many people are here from Greenland? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. This has been my 7th month serving as your representative. We've obviously had a very interesting 6 to 7 months in Congress so far. We first started our tenure back in January trying to address the debt and deficit issue. After I got assigned my committees, which are the Budget Committee, the Government and Oversight Reform Committee, as well as the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, we kind of went to work both on the committee side and the legislative side, putting together, I think, an agenda that tries to address the short and long-term fiscal challenges that we are having as a nation. So it has certainly been a challenge because we've got different perspectives and different views within the House, the Senate, and the White House on how to solve the challenges that we all face. But I think the one thing we all share is a hope and a willingness that we can solve the tremendous and important challenges ahead of us. So in the first 6 months, we started out by making sure that we started cutting spending in our own budgets for members of Congress. We then started getting engaged in the continuing resolution debate. We hadn't had a budget that was passed, so we needed to address what the spending structure was going to look like for the remainder of the fiscal year. We had a dialogue and debate about that. We were reducing some spending in some certain areas on the discretionary side. Couldn't necessarily come to any long-term agreement on the other side of the ledger, which is the mandatory or anything codified in law, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and unemployment compensation. We moved into the budget process where we spent the better part of 2 months crafting a budget, put a budget together, got it passed, which really, I think, reforms a lot of the spending that we have incurred over the last several years, and trying to address a long-term fiscal outlook of getting back our budget to balance over a period of years. That did pass the House. It is now awaiting action in the Senate. And then that brought us into what we had most recently is the debt ceiling debate and discussion. And while I heard from so many people already in New Hampshire that there has been a lot of frustration about the process, I think what ultimately, there are some good things that came out of it. I've heard from people on both sides of the aisle who, and I'm glad to hear from people in New Hampshire during the course of the debate, through the telephone town halls that we had, through the calls that we received and emails, and then, of course, when the President asked everybody to let us know as members of Congress what you thought, I got to tell you, you did, and that was helpful because we got a lot of insight from that information. We had about 300-400 phone calls. We had, I think, just over 1,000 emails into the office, and from all parts of the district. And that was helpful and was very useful. And I appreciated having that opportunity to hear from everybody. So that being said, I think there was great concern and frustration about the process. I would share with you in that frustration. I don't think we ever should be getting to this point. I would like to see a much more responsible way of doing things in Washington, and rather than the partisanship that we have seen and experienced, I'd prefer to see your members across the country trying to put the partisan politics aside and try to focus more on how we can achieve some results for the country.